there, and a warm welcome to our show. It is what it is with Omoyo Favor, the captain. You can follow us on Facebook at Kingly Favor Studio Reloaded, Instagram at Kingly Favor Studio Reloaded, TikTok at Kingly Favor Studio Reloaded, and most definitely on YouTube at Kingly Favor Studio. Thank you so much for the love, the likes, the shares, the views, and the subscriptions. May the Lord do you well. Last week's show triggered a lot of questions, and most people are like, how come you're now attacking the men of God? How come now you're attacking the church members and you are part of that? And one thing I want to clarify is, just like Apostle Paul, I'm actually borrowing a leaf from Apostle Paul. He had no business with people that were outside church. He was always concerned about the people that were in church. And so when we're talking about sexual immorality, when we are talking about the ancient dragon, we are not really addressing the people of the world. We are addressing the people who are calling themselves Christians. We are addressing Christians, people who are in the church, people who ought to live a life that is holy but are doing funny things in the church, that they are living an immoral life in the church. And we see this in 1 Corinthians 5. 1 Corinthians 5 chapter 9. I have written to you in my letter not to associate with sexually immoral people, not at all meaning the people of this world who are immoral, or the greedy, or the swindlers, or idolaters. In that case, you would have to leave this world. Verses 11, which is very important. But now I'm writing to you that you must not associate with anyone who calls himself a brother but is sexually immoral. All right? So, when it comes to inordinate affection, we are not talking about the people of the world because they do all sorts of things. When we are talking about inordinate affection, we are actually addressing the people who are in church, exercising inordinate affection, just like we saw from the scriptures last time. So this is not an attack towards the men of God or towards the church members. It's simply streamlining how people ought to live or how people ought to be in church. That we should be very careful about inordinate affection in as far as our churches are concerned. And I can also answer that question with verse 12. What business is it of mine to judge those outside the church? Are you not to judge those inside? God will judge those outside. So that is just to clarify that there was no attack on the men of God or the church members. Now, on to today's topic. We are going to look at the third way in which the ancient dragon, sexual immorality, sexual sin or illicit sex captures its victims into its mouth. And the third point we are going to look at today is seduction and sympathy. Now, this is the mother of them all. Seduction and sympathy work hand in hand. Where seduction does not work, sympathy applies. One thing worth noting about sympathy and seduction is it can work both ways, meaning a man can seduce a woman or a woman can seduce a man. And this is seen in Exodus 22. Exodus chapter 22, verse 16 to 17. If a man seduces a virgin who is not pledged to be married and sleeps with her, he must pay the bride price and she shall be his wife. Now, that is a clear indication that a man can seduce a woman. Now, we are going to look at an example of how a woman can seduce a man. And there are several, because when we talk about seducing, the first thing that comes into our mind is a woman. But I'm here to show you that seduction can even come from a man. Another example of a man seducing a woman is seen in Genesis chapter 13 verses 11. We had read this in our previous show about Amnon and Tamar. Verses 11. But when she took the bread to him, he grabbed her and said, "Come to bed with me, my sister." So here we see this guy trying to seduce the lady into bed with him. Now we look at women who seduced men, and we shall revisit Genesis chapter 39 again about Potiphar's wife. Genesis chapter 39 verses 10. It says, "And though she spoke to Joseph day by day, that is Potiphar's wife, he refused to go to bed with her or even to be with her." This thing of day to day is Potiphar's wife kept seducing Joseph. Seduction can be through words. Seduction can be through actions. So Potiphar's wife kept speaking to Joseph day by day, but he did not give in. Another example of seduction is King Solomon. We see this in 1 Kings chapter 11. 1 Kings chapter 11 verses 1 to 6. Solomon married a lot of foreign wives, and so the Bible indicates that the foreign wives seduced his heart away from God. So by the time Solomon was dying, he was very, very, very far from God, simply because the foreign wives, the many foreign wives he had married, had seduced him, had seduced his heart away from the true and living God. Another example of seduction is seen in Judges chapter 16. This is the story of Samson and Delilah. We all know that Samson was born to be a deliverer to the Israelites, and the secret to his strength was his hair that was never shaved from the time he was born. And so the Philistines had to look for a way in which to weaken him, because he had proved over and over again to be very strong for them. And they had to use a woman, Delilah, to seduce him in a bid for him to reveal the secret to his power. And I want us to look at this form of seduction that Delilah used. Actually, Delilah used seduction and sympathy. Let me show you. Judges chapter 16 verses 15. Then she said to him, now she's using sympathy, "How can you say I love you when you won't confide in me? This is the third time you have made a fool of me and haven't told me the secret of your great strength." With such nagging, she prodded him day after day until he was tired to death. So Delilah used sympathy. He kept pushing Samson, pushing, trying to seek sympathy from him until Samson was tired to death. And so he revealed everything to her. And this is what happened. After using sympathy, she now used seduction. Now, here we see Samson has already told Delilah everything in verses 17. Verses 18. When Delilah saw that he had told her everything, she sent a word to the rulers of the Philistines. "Come back once more. He has told me everything." So the rulers of the Philistines returned with the silver in their hands. Number 19 is very important. This is that is verses 19 is very important. This is what is bringing out seduction. Having put him to sleep on her lap, she called a man to shave off the 7 braids of his hair, and so she began to subdue him, and his strength left him. Other versions talk about she began to torture him, to torment him. That is seduction, until no more strength was left in Samson. And we all know how it ended for Samson. He fell into the mouth of the ancient dragon. Finally, we are going to look at the book of Proverbs that shows how seduction can enter somebody into the mouth of the ancient dragon. Proverbs chapter 7 and verses 10. Then out came a woman to meet him, dressed like a prostitute and with crafty intent. Note the word crafty intent. Ways of seduction. She is loud and defiant. Her feet never stay at home. Now in the street, now in the squares, at every corner she lurks. This is seduction. Verses 13. She took hold of him and kissed him. And with a brazen face, she said, I have fellowship offerings at home. Today, I fulfilled my vows. So I've come out to meet you. I've looked for you and have found you. I have covered my bed with colored linens from Egypt. Where? Seduction of the highest degree. I have perfumed my bed. Come, let's drink deep of love till morning. Let's enjoy ourselves with love. My husband is not at home. He has gone on a long journey. He took his purse and filled it with money. He will not be home until full moon. The seduction continues. With persuasive words, she led him astray. She seduced him with her smooth talk. Remember, we said there are two ways in which seduction can take place. Number one, talk. Number two, actions. Proverbs 30 verses 20. This is the way of an adulteress. She eats and wipes her mouth. And she says, I have done nothing wrong. One thing worth noting is that the women who seduce men don't think it's a big deal. They are very crafty in their moves. They are very crafty in their art. They have mastered the art of seduction. And once they do it, once they lead a man into a slaughterhouse, they pretend they have done nothing. That is what the book of Proverbs is saying, that they wipe their mouth and pretend they have done nothing. We have seen seductions happening in our churches. Women who are very crafty and intentional. They come to church with an aim of seducing the servants of God. They eat, wipe their mouth, and pretend they have not done anything. Remember, we said seduction is both ways. We have men of God who seduce women. They eat and pretend they have done nothing wrong. If you're a man or woman of God, stay woke from seductions, sympathy, or crafty intentions that can lead you into the mouth of the ancient dragon. It is what it is. So long, God bless you.